The Pittsburgh Steelers lose 34-17 to the Baltimore Ravens, dropping to 10-5, but still hold on to a slim lead in the AFC North. We'll talk about that here and more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu, locked on to enroll. There's no cost. It is easy to get started. All right, Steelers fans, that was a tough one, losing 34-17 to the Ravens, the most lopsided loss the Steelers have had since 2019, you have to go back to. The first time they've allowed 30 or more points against the Ravens since, I think, 2017. So just a tough loss all around, and you can point to both sides of the ball for the problems there. That being said, I think that there's a point when we get to talking about games that fans dip into their emotions and they lose kind of sense of what actually happened in this game. This game was very much in control of the Steelers outside of two really big mistakes by Russell Wilson. And that's not to say that Russell Wilson didn't make a lot of other plays in this game, because he did. In fact, he finished with a passer rating of 92.6, 2 touchdowns, 217 yards, 22 of 33. All those numbers are good. The bad is he fumbled in the red zone and threw a pick six. And the pick six really killed the momentum that the Steelers were building back at that moment, coming off of Minka Fitzpatrick, who made a brilliant interception on Lamar Jackson in the game that kept the Steelers alive after they failed to get it on fourth down. So I look at that, and you look at those moments. What's crazy is, outside of those two plays, Russell Wilson had a great game, was having a great game otherwise. If he slides inside the red zone, which was funny, I tweeted like the play before. I was like, that one play where he ran for a first down and didn't slide. I think he should slide not only for turnover sakes, but just for the fact that Justin Fields is hurt right now and you don't have the number 2 quarterback, so you need to protect yourself. And then in the red zone, I do think that he thought he had the end zone, and he did not see the defender on his left when they came in and forced the fumble on him. But still, got to protect the football better. He's the quarterback. And then the pick six, definitely him just trying to do way too much on a play where the Ravens were in solid position. 9 out of 10 times, or I'd say even 39 out of 40 times, Russell Wilson probably throws that ball away. This time, makes a big mistake, throws it right to Marlon Humphrey, and it's a pick six and basically kills the game. Steelers were very much in the game before that play happened. And I think that's the thing, is that when you look back at this game, that's what defined it. Now, we'll get into the defense because they allowed 162 yards on the ground to Derrick Henry. That's inexcusable. Mike Tomlin pointed that out after the game. It's the most rushing yards allowed by the Steelers since 2021. So 3 years' time, when they allowed Dalvin Cook to get 205. And I'm actually looking back here at all the games. I think it's the most rushing yards ever by a Ravens player against the Steelers. And that was that was a rough situation. And I think that's the thing that compounds on it with, right, is that not only did you have those 2 key turnovers, you didn't have the shutdown defensive play that they've had for the past 5 years on the Baltimore Ravens. That's the other thing. The Steelers, they're now 8-2 since 2020 against the Baltimore Ravens. And this is a tough time for one of those losses to come. But this is a Ravens offense that's been very good for years with Lamar Jackson, and they had another very good week. We said that, hey, the Steelers had to keep the scoring down in this game. They had to make this the rock fight, and the Ravens scored 34 points. Granted, about 7 of those points came from Russell Wilson, but you still need the defense to step up in this game and do better. Now, I haven't had a chance to break down all 22 film. This is literally like shortly after the game. I went and listened to all the press conferences, make sure I got all the notes. But I think that a lot that's being taken from this game is a lot of it comes down to stuffing the run. Patrick Queen, addressed it after the game in some comments to the media, and he said, guys got to take a long look in the mirror and get better. If you're supposed to be in a certain position, you got to be in that bleeping position. It's that simple. And that was a quote tweeted out by Brian Batko, one of my colleagues at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. But I do think there were plenty of positions at times where guys were out of position. And yes, we'll get to the injuries because that certainly played a part of it, especially in the passing game. That Mark Andrews touchdown over the middle, I think it was Mark Andrews. There was I think DeMonte KZ ran with the wrong guy, opened up the middle part of the field, and there were other miscommunications that led to problems there. But in the run game, there were also miscommunications. There was guys hitting the wrong hole, being in the wrong spots, and I think that allowed the Ravens to have their best rushing performance ever against the Steelers when you look at what Derrick Henry did in this game. And that's when you combine that with losing the turnover battle, with Russell Wilson having 2 key turnovers that are just completely flip the game around both times. Both, the red zone turnover, the Steelers, if they score that touchdown, they're up 14-7 in the game. They ended up being down 14-7 after that, in the drive after that fumble. And then the pick six, if they go down, they get a touchdown that drive, it's a tie game. Instead, they're down 14 after that pick six. So you can't really escape those types of plays. I also think the Steelers at times, just kind of fell short on certain key downs, but I also thought they had a good fight to them. Like Calvin Austin made several big catches in this game. I think he's quietly emerging as another solid option in this offense at 65 yards on 4 catches out of 5 targets. I thought what's crazy also is I thought the Steelers ran the ball well in this game. Jaylen Warren, 12 carries for 48 yards, a straight up 4.0 yards per carry. Najee Harris, 9 catches for 42 yards, and it wasn't all on one run either. He kind of broke it up throughout the game. That's a 4.7 yards per carry. And then Russell Wilson, 3 for 27. All in all, they ran the ball well against the Ravens, and I think part of it was because they came out and they threw on earlier downs. The problem was with that, Russell Wilson just made some key mistakes, some big mistakes in some key moments. But I think you got to trust Russell Wilson not to do those things in general, and you got to hope that sweeps it. You can sweep it under the rug, turn it quick around, and get back to Kansas City. And we're going to talk about that too in a little bit here. But this is a tough loss for the Steelers because now you're sitting at 10-5. The Ravens are also 10-5. Now, technically, you do hold the tiebreaker still over the Ravens because I believe of conference record or common opponents, I forget which, but they do hold the tiebreaker as of now. And if the Steelers win out, they will win the division if they win out. And I think there's also a way that if they lose to the Chiefs and beat the Bengals, then if the Ravens lose just one more game, they also clinch that way. But the bottom line is you had a chance in this game and you missed out on it. And there were opportunities to win this game. Russell Wilson doesn't commit his turnovers. I think there were some key big splash plays allowed by the Steelers that are just very atypical of them when you look at how they played, and that ultimately doomed them. And that's it's an unfortunate timing, but they have no time to wallow in it. You can't sit down and you can't stew over it for too long because now you got the Chiefs coming around the corner on Wednesday, a very short week to turn things around. In fact, if you're watching this on Sunday, I'm actually probably going to be at the facility, but by the morning because we have to get to a Mike Tomlin press conference at noon. It's going to be a quick and short week, and you're going to have to turn things around. Guys are going to have to ice up fast and get ready for a quick action against the team that's been the number 1 team in the NFL at 14-1, the Kansas City Chiefs, who they had a very convincing win over the Houston Texans. Patrick Mahomes did not look injured at all. I'll break down more parts of this where the Steelers' injuries are piling up and more parts where the team could try to bounce back on the short week. We'll talk about that more here and more on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, remind you this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. Prize Picks is the fun new daily fantasy game that everyone needs to start playing right now. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with any injury insurance policy. Your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Prize Picks also invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out on your lineup even if it's not perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And now on Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as making 4 correct picks. Prize Picks includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use code LockedOnNFL and you'll get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's code LockedOnNFL to receive a $50 bonus when playing just $5. That's Prize Picks. Run your game. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue to talk about the Steelers' loss to the Ravens. It's a tough one to take, but again, you got to go over fast. But let's talk about some of the things that I do think played a big factor, especially on defense, just looking back at the game. And again, just real quick, I only had time to go back to some couple of big plays to assess some things. Again, in the passing game where, again, the Ravens ate on, in both parts of their game in this one. This was Lamar Jackson's best game by far against the Steelers in his career. 15 of 23, 207 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did throw that interception to Minka Fitzpatrick, but ultimately, this was his best game. It's the first time he's thrown for more than 2 touchdowns against the Steelers since he entered the league in 2018. So there you go. You look at that plus Derrick Henry eating the Steelers alive on the ground. That's a tough set of things to take in a Steelers game. Also, the impact of Joey Porter Jr. not being there. Last game, Zay Flowers completely shut down and not a factor. This game, 5 catches, 100 yards. Kind of shows maybe Joey Porter Jr. is a little bit better than people give him credit for. But also, I think that when you look at this game, yeah, sure, you could point to all the starters who are missing in this game between Larry Ogunjobi up front. Maybe that played a factor into the run game. I still think they needed to be better in the run game, even without Larry Ogunjobi, but you could say that played a factor. The secondary being hurt up definitely was a factor in this game. You saw Donte KZ get cooked on some plays, and Deshon Elliott definitely not being there was a big impact on this game, as was Joey Porter Jr. and Donte Jackson not being in there. Corey Trice was in. I don't think Corey Trice got victimized too much in this game. I have to go back to watch specifically to make sure, but I think that when Joey Porter Jr. was taken out of the game because he had a what apparently is a knee injury, and I think Nick Farabaugh of PennLive.com, who we had on the Friday show, he said he reported that his sources say it's a PCL injury. They're not sure the extent of it. But Mike Tomlin said he'll inform us more on Sunday, so today or tomorrow if you're watching this Saturday night. So we'll see where those stats are. But when all those guys go out, it makes it that much harder to trust your guys to win man-to-man consistently. And they tried to switch to zones, and when you switch to zone, you need to be reliable. You need to be in your spots. You need to be accurate and detailed in your work. And some guys weren't. I felt like especially the Rashad Bateman corner touchdown. The Devontae KZ, your job is to trail him on the outside. Hold your inside leverage, but make sure that you don't give him that easy look. And he was just late in reacting on the play there. And there were several other plays where I think it was the touchdown to Mark Andrews. I think he was missing there. Isaiah Likely had a touchdown early where I think Patrick Queen was supposed to kind of run to the flat, and he got picked a little bit by Zay Flowers, and that slowed him from getting to that spot there. But all 3 of those touchdowns, I think, kind of came a little bit because the Steelers had to try to do a little too much with their secondary being so hurt up, and that's not an excuse, but it's a fact, and it's something that you could say, hey, they didn't adjust enough to it. I do think that they could have. You look at that moment and you say, like, hey, each of those moments, they're stretched thin and they're trying to make answers and they're just coming up short. And I think it's also a shame because was a really good game from Minka Fitzpatrick. Not only his interception, but there was a huge breakup that he had on Zay Flowers, where Lamar Jackson ran around everywhere in the backfield and then threw up a crossing, across his body shot on the other side of the field that. Normally you tell every other quarterback to not do, but he put it right on the money in the chest of Zay Flowers. But there was Minka Fitzpatrick right there, rips the ball out of his arms, and it's an incomplete pass and a big play. And the defense was spared a big play there. So you put that in. I think he had a couple really good run stuffs in this game. He came up to help. I think he finished with 6 tackles and that interception that kept the Steelers alive until Russell Wilson threw his pick 6. I think Minka Fitzpatrick, it sucks for the Steelers, but that might have been his best game of the season, or at least his most productive game of the season. But but if you're the defense, you got to look at this and you got to say, okay, how did we get beat here up front? Because they contained the run the last time that these two teams played. Now, granted, I also thought in that game John Harbaugh would have been smarter to kind of run the ball a little bit more with Derrick Henry. Because if I recall, he only finished the game with 13 carries and 65 yards. I mean, that's still a really good average. Granted, a large chunk of that was off of one 30-yard run. But that's why they went and got Derrick Henry. It's why when they went and got Derrick Henry in the offseason, I know some Steelers fans are like, oh, they just got another running back. That's not going to help Lamar Jackson. Like, actually, it will. It will give him another threat in the backfield and can take pressure off him to have to be the super playmaker every single game. And so, again, you saw a really good player in Derrick Henry, a really good player in Lamar Jackson. Both have really good games against a hurt-up defense, and that's where the Steelers are right now. But they have to rebound fast. Again, this Chiefs team, they're coming. They were played very well against the Texans. That was not one of the, winning on a last-second field goal against the Carolina Panthers or a bad, a missed snap or whatever the Raiders did to mess up their game against the Chiefs, anything like that. It wasn't like that. They handily beat the Texans in that game. So the Steelers, they cannot, rest on, the Chiefs have been barely hanging in there. No, they're 14-1 for a reason. Steelers are going to have to put in some serious work to win on Christmas Day against the Chiefs. That's going to be a very tough one, in my opinion. I think it's still doable depending on who's healthy, but they got to see who's healthy. And now, again, your defense, you're looking at it. You got to see what's the health of Joey Porter Jr., what's the health of Donte Jackson. Can Deshon Elliott be back? I think he's going to be crucial in this game when you got a guy like Travis Kelce in the game, and you also have all the things that the Chiefs are just so smart at doing and trying to get open guys over the middle for Patrick Mahomes to find. You'll also need, all hands on deck on the defensive front to be better there because, they lost the line of scrimmage in this game. They cannot afford to lose the line of scrimmage against the Chiefs. They have to own the line of scrimmage. They have to pressure Patrick Mahomes. They have to keep him contained. You saw he had a 15-yard touchdown run showing that high ankle sprain was not an issue for him. They're going to need to be getting after him this week on that Christmas Day game. Otherwise, the Steelers are going to wind up losing 3 in a row, and then everyone's going to be looking around like, where are the Steelers heading into week 18? Because then they still need to beat the Bengals to kind of stop them from falling 0-4 into the playoffs. And again, they have clinched the playoffs, and they could still clinch the division either by winning out. And again, I think if they beat the Bengals, at least just the Bengals, and the Ravens lose one more game, no matter which one of the games. I think they played the Texans and the Browns the last 2 weeks of the season. Then the Steelers could still clinch the division and get a home playoff game. But I still think they got work to do. I want to talk more about the offense and what they did right and didn't do right in this game, because I think that there's always some stuff about play calling that gets thrown in. And you guys have seen me talk about, I think they need to throw the ball earlier in downs. I think they did that in this game. I want to talk about how they can do that better, especially if they can get George Pickens back. We'll talk about that next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Your host, Chris Carter, with a bonus episode here on the weekend after the Steelers lost to the Ravens on Saturday. We'll have that more next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, I remind you this show is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Time is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it scrolling through some mind-numbing content for hours and hours. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? Well, our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free online courses. Those courses include Constitution 101, Intro to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and many more. All of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. I want to revisit the offense for a second here because I saw some people saying, the play calling was dumb on the offense. I think there's always that knee-jerk reaction for when the offense doesn't score enough points to win or has some bad plays that, just blame play calling. And as we've said on this podcast, I think that's ridiculous. And this is not to say the Steelers couldn't have done some things smarter in this game, but I didn't think the play calling was the big problem in this game. Again, you were averaging over 4 yards per carry with your running backs in this game. Russell Wilson, outside of his 2 big mistakes that were kind of isolated on him, was sharp in this game. Calvin Austin, 65 yards. Jaylen Warren, 44 yards. You had 27 yards of Van Jefferson. Ben Skowronek. I said it right this time. In your face. Just more so to the people that always make fun of me for calling him Skowronek. And I made a mistake of saying it right there because now I'm probably going to say Skowronek for the rest of my life. It's Skowronek. I got it right. In your face. Anyways, but him he got 2 passes for 25 yards. Not that Skowronek is, George Pickens, but he was another weapon in the Steelers offense that they didn't have late in the game. And I think that certainly didn't help either. The Steelers only get the ball to Pat Freiermuth 3 times for 16 yards. I think that was a little bit by design with the Ravens. I think that they did a lot to cover him up in this game and to make sure that if the ball was going to go to him, it wasn't going to be easy. But I got to see the all-22 tape on that. I'm not entirely for certain there. I thought Cordero Patterson's touchdown grab was fantastic. That was a great grab and a great throw by Russell Wilson too. Also, his bomb to Calvin Austin went for 44 yards. That was also a really good throw. That's the disappointing thing about Russell Wilson's 2 turnovers. You look at some of the other things that he did in this game, the runs that he had, the throws that he had deep down the field. There were some really sharp plays that he made against a defense that's been playing really good on the Ravens in the past few weeks. But he made 2 mistakes and they capitalized on it. But listen, that's also what the Steelers like to do. Remember how I always talk about the Steelers and the Ravens? They want to be like each other. They want to play like each other, especially on defense. The Ravens defense, they haven't been lights out throughout the year, but in this game, the past few weeks we've said they've been getting better, and in this game they played a bit better, and a lot of it was because they capitalized on turnovers. They got a pick 6, and they forced a fumble in the red zone. That's what good defenses do. They win in key moments. Go look at the Chiefs in defense and see how many big plays they make in big moments to swing games. I think that plays a big part of the results of this game. Also, as Mike Tomlin pointed out at the end of the game, the Steelers forced 3 fumbles in this game, and he didn't recover one of them. They needed to at least get one of them, especially the ones earlier in the game. I think it was Alex Highsmith stripped Lamar Jackson early on, and that didn't turn into a turnover. They had 2 others that they didn't recover, and the one time the Steelers fumbled in this game, Russell Wilson, actually, Jaylen Warren technically did fumble because they did overturn that. So I guess technically not all the times, but the one big fumble the Steelers had in this game, the Ravens were just happened to be right there for it. Sometimes the ball doesn't bounce your way, and that certainly plays a factor into it. But again, I think if you look at the things that are within your control, limiting those turnover plays, I think is a big part of it. But I don't think that the play calling was as big of a problem when you look at they were passing the ball early and it was opening up the run. In fact, I think if that's something that they step on a little bit more, they put the more fuel into that engine, that might be something that could lead them to success if they can get back George Pickens healthy. And that's a big if, and that's a big question facing this team as they get ready to play the Chiefs on a very short week. Now, we can tell you that, there's been multiple reports about George Pickens. There's video of him doing drills in practice, and he looked fresh and smooth and looked solid. I think Ian Rappaport of NFL.com came out and said that there's a likelihood, or there's people saying that there's a likelihood that George Pickens will be ready for the Chiefs game. They're going to need him. They're going to need him because he opens up this offense a lot more. But I think the other thing is that it allows Russell Wilson to be able to kind of open things up and get pressure off of other guys. You won't need as many passes. I think in the Steelers offense, it's nice if Ben Skowronek can get 2 catches for 25 yards. It's nice when Mike Williams get 3 for 24. It's nice when Van Jefferson can get 2 for 27. But you want those after the fact that George Pickens has gotten like 7 for 90 or 8 or 8 for 120 and 2 touchdowns or something like that. You want that after the fact of those guys, because then again, when you're doing that, you're showing the defense, oh man, they've got a supreme playmaker and they're able to hit with the other guys, the role players in this offense. That's really frustrating, and that's a lot of pressure to have to cover. And then when you put the pressure on them, that's what leads to mistakes. That's what happened, I think, in the Steelers in this game. The Ravens made a lot of big plays. The Steelers tried to stretch themselves a little bit thin, and they made some big mistakes, and the Ravens capitalized on them. The past 8 of the last 10 times these 2 teams have played, the Steelers have been the team to force the Ravens to make that happen. This time around, the Ravens were the team that did that. And I think, again, kudos to the Ravens. I've said all along, the Ravens are a very good team. I know Steelers fans have been excited about the dominance that they've displayed over the Ravens in the last 5 years. But as I said, Lamar Jackson's an MVP candidate for a reason. John Harbaugh's a great coach. And that's a well-run organization. And these two organizations, they mirror each other on a lot of things that they do. The only difference is right now, the Ravens are in the prime of an MVP quarterback, and the Steelers are kind of, working with Russell Wilson and trying to build back with him. But I think for Russell Wilson, he's been a good leader throughout several points in this year. This was the biggest negative impact I think he's had on the team in a single game yet this season. And I really don't think he's had too big of a negative impact in either of the other losses the Steelers had. He had some here and there and made some mistakes for sure. But this was the first game where I was like, oh, no, this was primarily on Russ for the mistakes that he made, and these were in mistakes that he could have not made reasonably. It's not that, this wasn't like, oh man, he put a good ball to George Pickens and it was just tipped and batted and interceptions. Those type of things happen. But these were both bad plays that he needed to have back on his own. But if Russell Wilson wants to be the Pittsburgh Steelers' future quarterback, he has to be able to stand up in these last two games and get them stronger into the playoffs, and also probably win a playoff game. If he's able to do that, even if it doesn't involve beating the Chiefs, even if they beat the Bengals and then they're either like the 5 seed or the 3 seed or the 4 seed and they win a playoff game, if he's a key factor in that, I think that'll help the Steelers say like, okay, yeah, he's definitely the guy, because he's been the guy for several games this season. And again, outside of 2 plays in this game, I thought he played very well. It's just the problem is that in the NFL, when you're playing the best of the best, and that's what the NFL is, when you make 2 key mistakes against a really good team, especially in their house, you're going to lose games a lot often, and that's what happened in this one. But if Russell Wilson wants to be the guy for the next 2-3 years, however long it is that he wants to, play more in the NFL, and he wants to be it for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think he has to step up, especially in these next 2 games. And he's had success against the Chiefs. They're going to need him to bring the success for the Steelers against the Chiefs this week. They're not going to win. I think with just 17 points, they're going to need probably at least 22, 23, 24, maybe even 27 or 30 points to beat these Chiefs, because they are a good team from top to bottom. That's why they're 14-1. We'll keep you up to date with all of that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. As I said, don't forget, there is a Mike Tomlin press conference on Sunday this week instead of on Tuesday or Monday as it was last week. I'm going to be there. I'm going to see if there's any big news updates. I'll do a YouTube short that you can follow here on YouTube, but you can also see whenever I do those quicker updates that aren't full episodes, but they're short clips. I usually put them on my Blue Sky account, my Instagram, and my TikTok. So if you don't see them, if you don't see it in your podcast feed, check my YouTube, also in YouTube Shorts. But check all the different places for those tomorrow. I'll try to have like an update after the Tomlin press conference, because I'm sure we'll get updates on like guys like Joey Porter Jr., Deshon Elliott, maybe George Pickens, maybe Larry Ogunjobi, Donte Jackson, all those key players, maybe even Justin Fields, because he was also out in this game, and that was an injury that did not look good when we saw it last week. But I'll have updates on that from the Steelers facility, and then we will have a Monday morning episode, it should be, if everything goes well, it should be up Monday at midnight. I'm not sure if I would get my grades done by then, because I don't know if all 22 tape will come out early enough Sunday to do our Stars and Skulls grades for the Monday show, but if not, then it will be for the Tuesday show. So I know Steelers fans look forward to those grades, and we will get to them there. But all in all, I think the Steelers, this was a disappointing loss, and it's one that they have to accept, but it's also something I think there were good things to pull from this loss, and that the offense did move the ball at times without George Pickens. And if they can limit those turnovers, which we've seen Russell Wilson do several times this year, and if the defense can put on a better effort, against the run, and and hopefully you hope you can get healthy in the secondary, I still think this team can be a really good team and can be a team that can go into the playoffs and be a dangerous team there. But to get that, they have to get healthier, and they have to play better. We'll talk about how they do that tomorrow here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social medias. I have the same handle, at Carter Critiques. You can also read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. I covered a Pitt basketball game where they put on an impressive performance against Sam Houston, closing out their non-conference play at 10-2, and the Panthers look strong heading into ACC play. But if you want that there, go read the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'll also try to have a film study up hopefully by Monday or Tuesday there, if you enjoy my work on that. And again, I'm Chris Carter. You can also follow this show, the Locked On Steelers podcast, on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content like this episode, which came out Saturday evening. We hope you guys are having a happy setup for the holidays. We'll have more here on the Locked On Steelers podcast tomorrow with an update from the Mike Tomlin press conference, and then a full episode out midnight going into Monday. We'll see you here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.